So
Hey everyone. I got Stuart Stevens here. You know him, you love him. Co-founder of the Lincoln Project, former Republican strategist, a man who spent his life, really his adult life, helping Republicans. He thought, hey, I'm doing something good for the country. And then during the rise of Trump, had a come to I guess you could say come to Jesus moment, come to America moment, and realized, it was all a lie. And that's the name of his fantastic book. One of my favorite books by, for lack of a better word, former Republican, never Trump Republicans, because I really appreciate the candor and the honesty. And I felt like in your book, it was all a lie. There was a true moment of reckoning, right? Like, oh, this is the party I supported. These people are terrible. These people are racist. The white supremacy is behind it, greed, and you don't hide it. And since then, Stewart, for the past several years, has spent his time, and I think if I'm wrong in this, trying to raise this Republican Party to the ground and create something better for the rest of us and our children. And with this particular framing, I called it rejecting Vichy Democrats and MAGA Nazis. And you might think, Waj, that's a little too much on the nose. You're being unfair. I don't think I'm being unfair. Based on what we saw last night, let's start with the Democrats, because I always try to be fair on this show, Stuart. Your take on the 8 Democrats, rather 7 Democrats and an Angus King, who decided to go against the majority of their Democratic colleagues, go against the majority of Democratic voters, go against what seems like the wave that brought power to Democrats last week, and say, you know what? We trust these Republicans and their inshallah. Let's go ahead and cave. Your
well,
take.
look, I think. But first, thanks for asking me, man. I'm a huge fan of yours. I think that, and we do have to divide between good intentions mistakenly directed and evil intentions. And I think that the intent, I take them at their word that they really do feel. I think Angus King is a good man. I mean that they really do feel that the pain that people are feeling. I think it's their motivation is good. Uh, so is Neville Chamberlain's. Um, and he really was trying to save millions of lives. He saw 50,000 British dead the first day of the Somme. Um, as opposed to what I think is on the Republican agenda, which I think is evil. I don't know any other word to describe someone like Stephen Miller or describe this process that Trump is going through, pardoning these January 6 deniers or election deniers, or January 6th. So, look, I think that is important because I think that the, the Democratic Party, to me, has this tendency of questioning and self doubt that I don't really understand. If I ran a Democratic Party, I would say, look, we're right, they're wrong. Chant it
Yes.
every day. Um, but look, on the positive side, I will say this, and this is something I used to always sort of try to frame things with clients. What is going to matter in 2 months? And I think what happened last Tuesday is more than important than what happened last night. Um, because I've always felt that the 2024 election was mistakenly interpreted if you say it's a realignment election. It was an election in which a challenger was heavily favored to win a right track of 27% in the country. No incumbent party's ever won when it's under 45. You had approval rating for a president at 40. No incumbent party's ever gotten more than 2 points higher. So they knew Project 2025 was poison. Now that people are being forced to drink it, it's only gotten more bitter. So I thought the reversion to the norm is really what happened on Tuesday. So you have the African American Republican nominee for governor getting 7% of the African American vote. That's exactly the same percent that Barry Goldwater got in 1964. You
Mm.
saw dropping to 32% with Hispanics in Virginia. That has sort of been the norm for Republicans. With Bush world, we got up to 43, but then with McCain, it dropped to 32. And it wasn't like McCain was out there talking about deporting a lot of people and calling them rapists. So it got up to, I think, 70% with Asians. So look, I think that is, well, we know it's the future of the country because the country is becoming a minority majority country. And all the Stephen Millers in the world aren't going to change that. So I think that uh, the inclusiveness of the Democratic Party. I think you had, a Mamdani winning, and you had governors in New Jersey and Virginia winning of a very different sort of tone. I think that's a very, very positive sign for the party.
Okay, so let's work backward. Let's start from last week and get to this week. And I'm glad we're talking because you are more generous than me. And you remind me of a conversation I had with a friend of mine on WhatsApp yesterday. We're in a group, and he knows some of these guys. He knows Tim Kaine. He's been very active in politics, and the majority of our WhatsApp group had the type of righteous rage. And he was like, he was like you, Stuart. He goes, "Listen, let's see how this plays out. I get it, people are pissed, but I know the intention wasn't bad. But sometimes, as you know, the road to hell or World War
Yep.
II or the rise of Nazis is paved with the best of intentions, and with men who should have been fighters but decided to be complicit. We'll get to that. Let's take it back. Let's take the DeLorean back last week, right? We had historic wins, like you said. We had Zohran Mamdani. The Democrats, the establishment, the right wing, the billionaires threw everything and a Bill Clinton and a kitchen sink at Zoran, who was a distant number two, Stuart, when I interviewed him in the spring. He stayed on message. The core message was affordability for all. Didn't throw immigrants under the bus. Didn't throw brown people under the bus. Didn't throw black people under the bus. Didn't throw transgender people under the bus. Was critical of Israel at a time when the establishment said, "How dare you?" He had to apologize for slogans he had never used. Nonetheless, stood by on his principles, was firm. Young Jews voted for him, not despite of his views on Gaza, but due to it. Um, he ends up getting this multicultural coalition,
Mhm.
wins by nearly double-digit points. Let's focus on that race first. Your takeaway from what that race showed you.
Look, I felt the Democratic Party was crazy to try to stay away from him, and any of those that did. He won the Democratic nomination. Okay, you endorse the Democratic candidate like that. Um, I have a positive expectations from Mandami. I happened to be with him the night after he won the primary. I ran into
Huh.
him kind of in the green room over at NBC. Now, in my experience, the night after you win a big upset victory, you're usually in a pretty good mood and you're at your best. But I was really struck by how charismatic he was. He was funny. He was a big guy, which is I didn't realize. Um, and he had a certain it factor. And what I think about him is, you know, say what you will about Bernie Sanders. He's a guy who doesn't care if he's liked or not. And I've known Bernie here in Vermont, since I was at Middlebury College and he was running for mayor. Um, Mandami, I think, wants to be liked. And
Mm.
I think that that is a positive characteristic of his that will serve him well. I think if he goes and does stuff that proves to be very unpopular, he's not going to be ideologically pure about it and say, well, I was right. You people are just wrong and they're going to come around to it. I think he'll adjust. I think this is a young guy who wants to have a big future, who cares about it. Um, so, look, just think about it. Republican Party is going insane over a guy that's talking about maybe 5 city-owned grocery stores while the Republican Party is nationalizing Intel. So, I mean, like
And then Donald Trump last week to what company was it? A Denmark company is like, shouldn't we like can we have a control of Novotel? And I think that's what caused the guy to pass out. He's like, sir, we're a foreign company. Yeah. So I mean the projection of it all, right? Because they're freaking out. And you know what I like about Mamdani? He goes, well, if billionaires could sit there and just dream about, oh, I don't know, eugenics and techno fascism and terraforming Mars and making Trump into a trillionaire, why can't we dream about free buses? And why can't we try it out? And if it works, great.
yeah.
If it doesn't, we'll do something else. And I feel like the message of affordability and going against the oligarchy, to me, the fact that he won by nearly double digit points, the fact that the entirety of the establishment went after him and people said, nah, the fact that 2 million people came out shows Stuart, the pulse of the nation. Nation changes. I'm a bit old enough. I'm 45. I've seen the nation change, and you have to read the nation, meet them where they are. There's a righteous rage. There's a restlessness that I think the Democratic Party. Let's stick with the Democrats for a second. The leadership hasn't acknowledged. And I think, to give Donald Trump credit, which I hate doing, this has been around for 10 years now, Stuart. Like Donald Trump won because he promised, it was all bullshit, but he promised to be an outsider. He's the consummate insider. Again, bullshit. But he said, I'm an outsider. I'm not like these politicians. I'm not in DC. And that's why you should vote for me because I don't suck up to these people. I'm going to drain the swamp. And I remember the people who voted for him said, yeah, he's going to bulldoze these corrupt institutions and even use those words. I'm going to be a bulldozer. And people said, okay. And the people who voted for Donald Trump were also supporting Bernie Sanders for that exact reason.
Mm.
Kind of an outsider who's promising something different. This has been the story for 10 years to me, Stuart, a type of anti-establishment, anti-institution outsider wing that comes in and cleans up
Mhm.
shop. And then you see the type of political malpractice, in my opinion, from Democratic leadership. Your guy is ascendant. Your guy's tapped into something. I haven't seen Democrats this excited since AOC and Obama.
Yeah.
And you will then throw everything for a disgraced alleged sex predator Cuomo. And even now, Stuart, when Chuck Schumer was asked, do you endorse Mamdani? He still said no. As a person who will diagnose political malpractice, where do you
But,
rank this on a 0 to 10?
I would bet you a lot of money if, when the Mondami campaign was polling every night at the last couple of weeks of the campaign, they were behind. I would bet anything. The day they went ahead in the primary is the day that Bill Clinton endorsed Cuomo. It was like Tyrannosaurus Rex endorsing a pterodactyl. I mean, these are two dinosaurs. I think people looked at that combination and just like wanted to throw up. Um, one of the things I liked about Mondami is a lot of people thought that Cuomo couldn't be beaten until they didn't run. Which curiously is what happened with Bill Clinton. And, you go back to 1991 when
Yeah,
George
yeah.
Bush had favorabilities up in the high 80s, almost 90% favorability. A lot of Democrats said they weren't going to run. Bill Clinton said, well, I'm going to run. And he ended up winning. And I think the same thing happened about Mondami. And I like that because it shows somebody that's running because they want to win, not because they're afraid of anybody, not because they're gaming the system, the timing, and you're not afraid of losing. And I think, that's a really those are admirable qualities in life and in politicians. Um, so look, the other thing, I just think you have to look at the totality of Tuesday also. So you also had winning in New Jersey and in Virginia. And look, I worked for Chris Christie when he got elected governor of New Jersey twice, right? New Jersey is a pretty conservative state. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of very, very blue collar sort of voters that you need to connect with. Um, and it wasn't just that she won in a rout. And she wasn't running against a nutbag who didn't have any money. I mean, that was a serious campaign, somebody who, not a crazy person. And she won in a rout. Um, so,
Double folks, 12 points. And
yes,
I remember,
that's a lot of people.
2 days before the election, when it comes to the media framing, it was like, "Oh, it's a tight race. Black voters are gonna abandon Cheryl." She won black voters by 90%, like 90 to 9%,
Mhm.
90 literally 2-9, not 99, 90 to 9. She won a multicultural coalition, and she won by 12 points. When it's I'm in Virginia, Stuart, and we haven't talked, for a month or so, I think. But I was telling folks because, when you're on the ground and you know a community, you know the pulse. You
Yep.
you follow the polls, but you
Yeah, there's
know.
nothing like it. Yep.
Yeah, and so that's why I remember when it was McAuliffe versus Youngkin, I told everyone, all my friends, Youngkin's gonna pull through by 2 points. And they said, no, 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 McAuliffe stuff's by 2. I'm like, you're misreading it. Suburban voters, this parents' choice, the DEI stuff, it's spooked them out. They're not admitting it. He ends up winning by 2 points, right?
Mm.
And Democrats didn't have a counter response to it, which I thought was political malpractice by McAuliffe. This time around, because of the government shutdown, and, in the DMV area, Stuart, I'm sure you've all have read the headlines. I mean, people are in pain. I have friends who are in pain. Like
Yeah.
they're like, and they all blame Republicans in addition to the rising costs. Jay Jones, I give this example of why I think to your point, why this was such a big win and shows you where the energy is in the country. The attorney general race, which people might not be following, right? I've said this before. Just stick with me, folks. Jay Jones was behind Miaris by 2 to 3 points. Miaris is a Republican, Trumper. Jay Jones effed up. They found like a text that he had sent when he was a state legislator, like, figuratively just threatening violence. It's all bullshit compared to the violent insurrection. Nonetheless, Republicans pounced on it. Ad after ad after ad. Jay Jones, do you want this man who wishes violence? It was an ugly text, right? So I'm like, everyone's like, oh, he won't win. Then the government shutdown happened. And for the past month, Stuart, I was like, he's going to pull it off. He's going to win by
Mhm.
1 or 2 points.
Interesting.
Yeah, and like this is going to be a trifecta. And now you saw Virginia. They got the trifecta, the governorship, lieutenant general, attorney general, 64 houses, right? Seats in the house. And then the whole you saw the map where everything leaned blue. And then you saw this multicultural coalition that came out. To me, had Democrats run anyone, I feel like in New Jersey or even Virginia, I feel like the sentiment to me was a widespread rejection of Donald Trump Republicans and their economic policies. I mean, they lost the entirety of Donald Trump lost all the Latino support he had. It went back to
Yep,
2016
we're
numbers.
back to norm, yeah. Yeah,
And to me, and then I want to ask you this question, but then I was looking at the crosstabs
mhm.
and folks, I was like, come on, white folks, for Mamdani, for Mickey Sherrill, and for the Virginia races, the double digit wins were thanks to the cobbling of the multicultural coalition, like you said, the Latinos, the Asians, black voters. In all those three races, a majority of white people still didn't go for them, Stuart.
Well, look, I used the Doug Jones race when he got elected, senator for the first Democrat elected in forever in, Alabama, as sort of like it's almost like a setup of Saturday Night Live joke. What would it take to get, white moderates or conservatives to vote for a Democrat? Well, what if he was running against a child molester? And it was like, nope, they still got 67% of Alabama white voters voting for the thing. But look, I think what you're saying here is really important. We don't talk enough about it. And that is race. We don't talk enough about race in America politics. I don't understand why. Race is the key in which American politics is played. And what is driving the panic in the Republican Party is the fact that the country is becoming a minority majority country. They know that. And the party had two possible paths. One, to say, we have failed at appealing to these voters. We need to change. We need to find out whatever it is that we're not doing right and grow in that direction. Which I will say, this is something that George Bush in Compassionate Conservatism was at least an attempt to do, though with 9/11, that whole agenda never really got developed. But remember in 2005, the chairman of the party, Ken Melman, went before the NAACP and apologized for the Southern strategy. So, I mean, I think that acknowledging that, like you were talking about, myself, I think the first step to it's like, okay, we were wrong. We shouldn't have done this. And then does it make a difference? I think it does. So, but the party went in the other direction and decided to narrow its race. So, since to go to the title of our little episode here, you're sitting around in J.D. Vance's office. You're a staffer for him. Some youngish people, not kids, who are elected officials and Republican operatives, have a like pro-Nazi little love fest going on here on text. And J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, goes, I'm going to defend that.
Yep.
Like, what do you say to him? Like, "Oh, look, boss, I don't think defending the Nazis is super." But why did he do it? Because the Republican Party has really become an extremist movement. And what
Yep.
do we know about extremist movements? Purity tests are increasingly important. And you have to demand more transgressive behavior, uh, just to get attention. So, no, JD Vance is sitting there, no enemies to my right. That means I defend Nazis. Not a problem. I'll be your guy. Um, and I think it just shows the complete moral bankruptcy of the party. And that is not where the country is. I mean, I don't care if you're running for a supervisor in the reddest county in Mississippi. You don't go out there and defend Nazis. It's like not a good thing. It's just like or, there's not a constituency for that except this crazy little world inside the Republican Party.
Yeah, and when I said, the framing is no to Vichy Democrats and MAGA Nazis, I wasn't being tongue in cheek, folks. Stuart's right, and I know there's a lot so people forget, but just a couple of weeks ago, oh, Jen's joined. Hi, Jen, fantastic whistleblower on ICE. We've had her on our show twice before. I'm going to invite you back, Jen, next week. But people speaking about ICE. People didn't vote for children being zip tied. People didn't vote for 79-year-old white men, shopkeepers being thrown to the ground. People didn't vote for priests in collars being tear gassed in the
Mm.
face. People didn't vote for their communities being terrorized with masked armed agents who walk around like the Gestapo. And speaking about Nazis, without hyperbole, what Stewart was referring to was the Politico article that came out last month that had 2,900 pages of Telegram texts between young Republican leaders in their 30s and late 20s, including
Yes.
state legislators, these kids that JD Vance talked about, saying things like the following: I love Hitler. Rape is epic. 1488, which is, folks, 1488 is used by white supremacists. It's their slogan. Imagining torture, violence against the rest of us, throwing us in the gas chamber. And another reason why Jay Jones was helped and beat Miaris, even though he's behind by 2 or 3 points, is people are like, I just saw Republicans spend a month doing ads condemning Jay Jones for the stupid violent text that he did as a state legislator. But then the vice president is perfectly fine with young Republican leaders throwing the rest of us in gas chambers. Okay, I think being pro-Nazi is worse. And then now, Stuart, I wanted to ask you this because you spend your life in the Republican Party. I predicted this. I hate predicting this. I said that Nick Fuentes would be the present and future of the GOP, what he represents. And I
Yeah.
keep the receipts. And I remember 2.5 years ago, Donald Trump dined with Nick Fuentes and post anti Semitic Kanye West. I've been asking for 2.5 years for reporters to ask Donald Trump, do you condemn Nick Fuentes? I think he was asked once. He said, Nick, huh? Who? I don't know who that was. What? Just like he did with CZ, who he pardoned. Huh? CZ, my business partner? Huh? Money laundering? What? I don't know. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene has supported Nick Fuentes, and now you see Tucker Carlson supporting Nick Fuentes. Talk to us about the Nick Fuentes civil war that has ignited with the conservative movement, Kevin Roberts, and the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, look, I think this is really interesting. The Heritage Foundation has been corrupt for a long time. And the dirty little secret inside the Republican Party that I was part of, we really didn't care what the Heritage Foundation was saying. It was
Mm,
not some great engine of ideas. It was really a fundraising mechanism that hired a bunch of people that paid themselves a lot of money, but we didn't really pay attention to it. But you look at where the party chose to go, it's only going to accelerate that route. So you you I go back to this. I think in the post-World War II world, Republican Party had took two paths. One was Dwight Eisenhower, conservative, boring, governing, sane, and Joe McCarthy, conspiratorial, racist, xenophobic, non-governing.
right.
A lot of us who worked for Bush, I mean, like me, Nicole Wallace, Matthew Dowd, Mark McKinnon, Pete Wayner, we used to all sit in the same office. I think it's fair to say that we thought our side was the dominant gene in the party, and that the party, if only because the country was changing so much, would have to go more in our direction. And I don't know any honest conclusion, and this is really what I had to come to grips with after Trump won, is we were wrong. We were the recessive gene. The
Mm,
party is what it wants to be. Nobody makes anybody vote for Donald Trump. That's just what they want. And the degree to which the party has been compromised by Russia is a great underreported story. I mean, the Russians elected Donald Trump, helped elect Donald Trump. It's always causality is always difficult in politics, but there's no question, asked Marco Rubio's Senate Intelligence Committee, they wanted to elect Donald Trump, and what did they get? Well, unimaginable what they got. And now you have all these Republican senators on an issue like Ukraine. They're afraid to take Donald Trump on. Um, and you saw that across the board. And it's just this sort of moral collapse of a party. So They talk about with this split and that real conservative Republicans don't agree with the Harris Foundation. I don't really know where these people are. Who
Mm,
are these people? I mean,
mm.
I don't hear a lot of Republican senators attacking the Heritage Foundation, and I think silence is complicity. Um, so I don't know. I mean, this is a party that doesn't have a room for Cheney. A Cheney.
A Liz Cheney, a Dick Cheney, a Mitt Romney, a John McCain, and you and me are old enough, Stuart, that we remember in 2012, the flag bearer for the party who ran for president as a Republican was Mitt Romney. In 2008, the person who ran was John McCain. I have a dark joke that you can use that I think is works, is that if George W. Bush ran as a Republican, MAGA would reject him for being a Muslim lover. Because if you remember,
Not a
George
joke.
W.
That's the truth. That's a truth. That's not a joke. It's a true statement. Go back and read George Bush's acceptance speech at the 2000 convention, which was written by Michael Gerson, who became a Washington Post columnist, sadly died about 2 years ago. A evangelical Christian, and when we were all living in Austin in '99 and 2000, we were all going out to clubs at night, drinking and raising hell. Gerson was working quietly in a homeless shelter. Never told anybody. I only found this out because I had to drag him out to rewrite something. I found him working at the homeless shelter. I mean, that is a truly good person. He wrote that speech. Go read that speech. It's like an artifact from a lost civilization. It's
Mm.
all about humility, service, compassion. That guy couldn't get 5% in the Republican Party now. No, absolutely not. Um,
And folks, it wasn't that long ago, and I'll share a story. Um, Clearly not a fan of George W. Bush, the war on terror, Mitt Romney. I want people to realize that, because I'm sure people are like, why are you normalizing it? But I'm telling you, compare and contrast. That was a party that, despite its policies, still preached a compassionate conservatism, was pro-immigration. I believe it was the Bush Foundation that released their own data that said actually immigrants are good for the economy. Mitt Romney, being Mormon, when it came to religious persecution, he didn't ran on the manufactured, hateful anti-Sharia bullshit because he recognized it. Because, like, oh, they're going to do this to Mormons, right? So there was some level, just some level of decency there that, like, we won't go, come on, let's not go that far. And I remember, Stuart, in 2011, I did Fear Incorporated, The Roots of the Islamophobia Network, an investigative report for CAP, which talked about the creation of these horrific Islamophobic memes that you just saw in the last 2 weeks against Mamdani, right? That was used against Obama. And then the people who proliferated it were, if you will, the original MAGA types, these freaks, these nuts. That, yes, they were allowed on right wing media, and they proliferated on social media. But if you will, the respectable conservatives, once that report came out, Stuart, they met me. I'm talking about Republicans who were working in the government, dyed in the wool conservatives. Like you said, some evangelicals were like, "Man, we got to change," because there was also an audit. If I remember, that the Republican Party said we have to become a multiracial and be pro
after
Latino.
Romney lost, we lost, by the way. The party did go through this so-called autopsy of
Yeah.
asking itself, why is it that we keep losing? Now, the conclusions were not profound. They were obvious that you had to have appeal to more non-white voters. You had to appeal to more younger voters. You had to appeal to more women, particularly women that worked outside the home, particularly younger women. Okay, it's good to say this stuff, but what's interesting about this is if you go back and read this, it was presented not only as a political necessity, but a moral mandate. That if you're going to earn the right to govern this big, changing, cacophonous, contradictory, loud country, you need to be more like it. And then Trump came along, and everybody said, "Great, this is what we're gonna do." And Trump came along, and I swear to God, man, you could hear an audible sigh of relief in the Republican Party, like, "Thank fucking God, we can go back to winning with white people. This is it. We don't have to pretend we really care about this shit."
Yeah, we
And
could go all in. Now we could go full white supremacist,
yeah,
full
yeah,
white
but
nationalism. And what I was saying is, at that time, folks, believe it or not, 2012, 2011, I was told, I was working with dyed in the wool conservatives who were like, "Watch, this report is very important." This is what they told me: "Thank you for writing this report, even though it exposes some of these Republican officials, elected officials,
Mhm.
the type of airing of dirty laundry shames us. And now we can vomit out these extremists from the party. That was the goal around 2012, 2013. Okay. So I remember, Stuart, that, CPAC, there was a CPAC conference, and these people that we outed, these original MAGA freaks, right? The pre MAGA freaks, the extremists, the hate mongers, they weren't invited by CPAC. And so Steve Bannon in 2014 did a parallel event called The Disinvited,
Yep.
elevating these freaks, Pam Geller, I think Daniel Pipes, a few, Steve Emerson, and Steve Bannon said, I'm going to do a side panel called The Disinvited, and I'm going to elevate these freaks that got rejected by CPAC. Folks, fast forward 11 years, those people now have infected the Republican Party. They took over. And now I see the next generation, Stuart. I want to ask you this because I've been paying attention to, because it's been 10 years. People forget 10 years is a long time. That means there's an entire generation that has been radicalized and groomed by Trump and Trump's cruelty. And now what I'm seeing is that Trump and the people in Trump's orbit are seen as the rhinos for this next generation.
Yeah, it's, which is what always happens in extremist movements. That the previous generation can never be, iteration can always be trumped by, uh, and eclipsed by a more radical group. This is how it starts. It's true in the Red Guard, and there's never a moderating force within that ends it. It wasn't the moderate element of the Khmer Rouge that ended the Khmer Rouge. Um, and it's just a pattern that repeats itself. And look, this is, Joe Trippi, who's, I think, one of the certainly the best Democratic consultants of his generation, a guy I hated to go against because he was so goddamn good. But, you know, uh, when we used to do campaigns against each other, we look back at it and laugh about what we were doing attack ads about. It was about the capital gains tax. Like, well, one person wants it at 32%, and one person we wanted it at 28%. And it was like those are quaint issues compared to what is happening now. And there is no party called Republicans that really is a pro-democracy party now.
Right.
And and we just have to admit that you have to beat these people because pain is the only teacher in politics. And if you have enough people who will start to lose and realize they are losing, they can't lose with Trumpism, it'll change. But, it's a threshold level of acceptance of advancement in the Republican Party to deny what a fifth grader knows, and that is who won the 20 election. And when you demand that level of humiliation, self-humiliation and subservience, you know, I I wrote a piece about this, and I'm something I've thought about a lot. How is it that we ended up like this in the Republican Party? And I think it's something I think we did over decades, that we devised a system that rewarded compliance,
Yep.
that rewarded going along, that rewarded waiting your turn. That if you were a true outsider, you were punished, you couldn't really advance. So you do that, decade after decade, what happens? You kind of end up with this genetic experiment of a group of politicians who've risen to the top who are really compliant. So, I think about, getting elected to the Senate is a real it's a pain in the ass. I mean, you have to go through all this humiliating stuff. You have to raise all this money. You have to, talk to all these people you don't want to talk to. So you finally get elected to the United States Senator as a Republican to do what? Whatever Donald Trump tells you? Really? That was worth all the bullshit? All the early morning, late nights, all the humiliating phone calls begging for money to do whatever Donald Trump wants? And I just find it just so, so dispiriting. And as critical as you are of the Democrats, I am more critical of these Republicans because they are the heirs to the greatest generation, and they have abandoned that legacy, and I think it's just utterly shameful.
And not only abandon that legacy, look how they're behaving. And that if you just step back and look at the corruption of the Republican Party, look at Ted Cruz, JD Vance, Mike Lee, all super Christians apparently. Look how they spend most of their time, Stuart, essentially being trolls online. The victories are measured by how they shitpost against us. I mean, look at JD Vance. I don't know if you saw this, but and you probably did because you're a masochist like me and you follow these freak shows. JD Vance on Halloween, did the meme, man. He did the meme, and as a result of him doing the meme and behaving like the punchline, how South Park made fun of him, all of these Republicans, and I'm not just talking about like Republican trolls or Nazi bots or Russian bots. I'm talking about like actual like elected officials, like JD Vance is the man. He's the king. This is awesome. I'm like, really? This is what we expect from our vice president. This is what makes us awesome. As there's friggin' lines around food banks, as people can't afford meat, as people are terrified about their flat wage, as people are wondering why Elon Musk might be a trillionaire, as people are wondering about like their healthcare premiums going up. This is a party of 4chan trolls. It's a party of
I
like just shit talkers and
so,
accelerationists.
I don't understand something very basic here, and that is, how is it that we have this lunatic as president who's appointing these Russian stooges, drunks, conspiracy nuts, quacks across the government, and we're having a national discussion about what's wrong with the Democratic Party? Like, how did this happen? How did the media allow this to happen? You lost an election. Okay, that happens. Actually, in a democracy, somebody does have to lose. It's not a bad thing you lost an election. And because you lost, it doesn't mean you were wrong. I mean, I grew up in, deepest Mississippi, seventh generation Mississippi. My parents were against segregation. I don't remember them, and a lot of people ran as segregationists and won. I don't remember them sitting around the kitchen table and going, well, maybe we should rethink segregation. It was like, "No, we lost. Let's try to win next time." And there's something, that's sort of questioning about the Democratic Party that is just, I just hope we can get beyond that because, people are drawn to swagger. People are drawn to confidence. And, nobody wins the Super Bowl like walking out there and going, "Yeah, I think we got a shot." I don't know, probably not, maybe, we could. It's like, "No, this is ours, we deserve this, we're going to take it." And that's what Democrats need to do. Not that I could be who am I to tell Democrats what to do, but I think that they are the majority of the country. This
Uh,
country, and that is what you saw in this last election. You know, this country does not want masked men hunting brown people across the country. This is not what we want, and it's sick. And one thing that really strikes me: all of these people are deeply, deeply damaged people.
That's right.
Jamie Vance, yeah, Stephen Miller,
Yep.
Steve Bannon. These are all just weirdos, freaks, horrible people. And you can look at somebody like JD Vance and go, well, he had this, unfortunate background. Da, da, da. Well, we know a lot of people had unfortunate backgrounds that didn't become monsters and overcame it. Um, and there is a lot of acting out personal pathology in the public sphere
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
that's just a sick way to go about governing. Um,
And I've noticed this for a while. It's these unchecked pathologies, the daddy issues, the mommy issues.
yeah,
Not all of them, but it goes Elon Musk, daddy issues. Peter Thiel,
yes,
parent issues. Joe Rogan, daddy issues. Tony Hinchcliffe, daddy issues. Donald Trump, daddy issues. Stephen Miller, I think, got rejected by a Latina and then decided to become a white nationalist. Pete Hegseth, I mean, just a manic f up. I'm sure you know a lot more than I do. Clearly, these are, that famous saying that now Gen Z says all the time, if only men would get therapy. Yeah, they're playing out their pathologies, their grievances, their rage in real time with power and politics that terrorize the rest of us. And this is where I get to shit on the Democrats, Stuart, is with this righteous rage. You're seeing a righteous rage build up in the country. People are sick and tired of the status quo. What do they want? Fighters. They just want
yes.
fighters. Give me a sincere, authentic person who will fight. And I'm glad you used the sports analogy. You and I watch sports. You saw your Giants literally squander away yet another victory.
Now they
And
fired the coach today, right?
yeah, I'm sorry, New York Giants fans. I was like, "Oh, they got this," and then I got a message from Stuart, and I'm like, "Oh, of course they effed it up." Of course, my Niners at least are injured, so I knew they were going to get shellacked, right? But let's give a sports analogy. My Niners completely injured. Just go and fight. I know you're going to get your ass kicked by the Rams. I just want you to fight. Just fight, damn it, right? Show fight until the end. Even if you're down 2 touchdowns, just fight. That's what people respect. So they want fighters. They want fighters willing to stand up against this extremely unpopular, racist, criminal regime, which now has an approval. I wouldn't be surprised, Stuart, if this approval rating dips down to 35. He's at 37 right now. It's only been a year. Folks, to have an approval rating of 37 in your honeymoon year, just it's an abomination, right? Have some courage, have some guts. Don't throw the base under the bus, right? Going back to your point, you only lost by 1.4 points. There was no mandate. Donald Trump's never crossed 50. And all the Latino voters gone because he overreached. Asian voters gone. Young voters gone, right? So what Gavin Newsom did originally,
Right.
keep receipts. Let me do a podcast. I'm going to invite Steve Bannon and I'm going to invite Charlie Kirk and I'm going to
Right.
agree with him. Right? That's what he did, folks. Let me find the young Joe Rogan and spend $20 million. Oh, the universe gave us Mamdani. Let's kick him in the balls and support Cuomo instead, right? And so what happened yesterday, and I think just to show you from a Democratic point of view or progressive point of view, why people are so pissed, is you fought for 40 days.
Yeah.
You know Donald Trump is back in the corner. You see Marjorie Taylor Greene singing a different tune because she sees where the wind is blowing. She's blaming Mike Johnson for shutting down the government, right? You see the approval readings coming down. You see Jay Jones beating Miaris. You see a double-digit victory, and you have him on the ropes. Even Donald Trump is fuming. You want to get a guarantee that the Obama subsidies will be extended. That's the reason why you've done this, okay? Get something in writing. And these 8 Democrats, maybe they have the best intentions, but as we know, sometimes the road to hell and punching yourself in the face is paved with best intentions. They went against the party, they went against the base, and they caved. And now Republicans are like, yeah, inshallah, we'll vote on it. And I want to read you this from the centrist, alleged centrist, Governor elect Mickey Sherrill. This was her quote, Stuart, just to show you where I think the Democrats are. I think she sees the tea leaves also. Quote, I ran for office to deliver for New Jerseyans, even in the face of Washington leadership that keeps failing people. And last week we won with a broad coalition after laying out a plan that takes bold action on costs, despite political pressure and people saying it couldn't be done. Voters made it clear the American people want leadership with a backbone. And at a critical moment, when they need leaders to stay strong under pressure, the Senate is on the brink of caving on a bill that the American people can't afford. They caved. Quote, make no mistake, if this deal passes, it will lead to New Jerseyans paying far more for their health care when they already are paying more and more for everything. Making this deal is malpractice. We have more than 9 million people in New Jersey who are counting on us to fight for them. And instead, Washington is putting them in harm's way. Not on my watch. End quote. Stuart, your response.
Yeah, listen, God love her. I mean, we used to say in politics, there's nothing in the middle of the road except yellow lawns and dead armadillos. And, that you in politics, you have to be willing to dig the ditch you're gonna die in. You have to say, "Look, this is right, and I'm for it. And if it means we're gonna lose, but I think we're gonna win."
Yeah,
And the people are drawn to conviction. I mean, I look at these AOC Bernie rallies they were having, and, there are a lot of people there that don't agree with them on everything, but it's just the idea that they're fighting.
that's
And
right.
it goes back to, one of Bill Clinton's maxim was strong and wrong will always beat weak and right. And he got it. And it's true. Um, and, this idea that the Democratic Party went and held 200 plus focus groups with young men, you don't go to a focus group to remind you of your deeply held beliefs. I mean, it's like commissioning focus groups. Why do men go to strip clubs? I don't know. I think we know, guys. I don't think we need to really think too hard
It's
about
for the
this.
ambiance, Stuart.
Yes, it's the buffet. Um, I saw The Sopranos. They love the food,
Yeah.
at the Bada Bing. Man, look, I think you just have to be out there. I mean, I admire the hell out of you and these others for holding, the party accountable, which is something Republicans we never did, um, and demand more. But,
I love that quote. The quote, strong and wrong beats weak and right. It's unfortunate, but Clinton was spot on. And the polls show, Stuart, I'm sure you've read this, that the American people view Democrats as weak and deer in headlights when they're asked to compare. And they said Democrats are like deer in headlights, and Republicans are like ravenous lions. They take what they want. And it's not like they like the Republicans, but they say, you know what? Republicans get power, they flaunt it, they flex it. And what we're seeing right now is the DNC has the lowest favorability rating since 1994. People literally perceive them as weak, as not fighting, and strong and wrong beats weak and right. There's a reason why Donald Trump, as a strong man, is able to win over men. At least he'll get it done. At least he cares. There's something about it. I know it sucks, but folks, it appeals to human nature. A leader, you want them to be strong. I'll get it done. I don't give a shit. And you're like, oh, he's unethical. But compared to this completely weak, flaccid man who has no spine, I guess I'll go for the strong guy who'll just, kick down some doors and hopefully the door won't fall down on me. And that type of strength is something that I think is not reflected. And I want to ask you this: how long can Chuck Schumer last? Because Chuck Schumer didn't vote for it yesterday, right? So this is what I was thinking. If Chuck Schumer didn't vote for it, but he allowed 8 Democrats to break ranks and vote for it, that to me reveals weak leadership.
Yeah.
If Chuck Schumer's like, I didn't vote for it, but they did what I wanted them to do, that reveals also weak leadership because now he's lying to the people and going against the base. Your take from your decades
Look,
of,
look,
working this.
I think one of the disadvantages Republicans have is they have no one who is the face of the party that is appealing. Absolutely no one. I think Democrats have a lot of faces out there that are appealing, but Chuck Schumer is not one. I mean, I think that you look at Schumer, it's like wallpaper at best. He's a Washington institution. He gets in that thing, man. I've elected a lot of senators. They go there, they think there's as a guy said, friend of mine who got elected as a senator said, they all think they're wearing togas over here.
Yeah.
And they get this whole weird sort of inside talk about process and this and that. And Schumer, he's just as a face of the party, he's never going to help you. There's nothing inspiring about Chuck Schumer. There's nothing that makes you wanna I may, die on this fight, but I'm gonna die with Chuck Schumer fighting next to me. No one ever says that,
I don't think
you
his
know?
family's even said that. I think they're like,
No, I
we'll
mean,
let Chuck die. He's had a good life.
yeah, it's another era of politics, and, I think one thing that Democrats I wish, they would do, I think they could do, is come up with an agenda for this coming election that when you vote Democrat, you're going to get this. This is what we're going to do. The first day, we're going to cut off funding for ICE. The first day, we'll cut off funding for the executive branch. The first day, we'll pass a tax on everybody who makes more than $10 million a year. Pick a number. I've never seen a poll where that didn't test 90-10 at least. Um, you're going to go, we're going to go after these oligarchs. We're going to nationalize Starlink. We're going to nationalize SpaceX. You shouldn't have an unstable man with drug issues involved in critical national security issues. But give people something that, look, go out there and fight. We're going to give you this. And I think that would be um, very positive as a sort of national agenda.
And even if you can't do it, who cares? Just promise it. Look at Donald Trump. He promises it, he lies, but at least he promises it. And then once he get in power, he goes, all right, whatever. I'm perfectly fine with Democrats doing that. Pie in the sky. Inshallah, let's try it out. Why not?
Yeah.
If Donald Trump can spend $300 million and destroy the East Wing and lie and create a bunker, we could get free buses. Let's give it a shot. Let's go for affordable healthcare. Let's regulate the billionaires. Let's nationalize Starlink. All right. Let's run on accountability. Let's have trials. Let's put Stephen Miller in jail. I think that'll be very, 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 very popular. Maybe we don't need ICE. Do you want the Gestapo? Maybe we should replace ICE with something better. Just dream big. And I think what the Mamdani and I'll end on this. I think what the Mamdani campaign showed you is you stand 10 toes down on principle. Like I said before, I interviewed him when he was a distant number two in the spring, a couple of months ago. He has the same platform. He goes, I'm going to ride or die on this platform. He was a distant number two, folks. He just chipped away, chipped away, chipped away, chipped away. He didn't take any vote for granted. He talked to everyone. He met people where they are. And the message was affordability. Let's take on the oligarchy. Why should the 1% get all the money and you don't even get crumbs? And people are like, yeah, why not? And if he says, if Elon Musk and all the other people could get billions, why can't you get free buses? Yeah, Yeah, why not? Americans are so interesting. It's like we have Stockholm syndrome. We don't deserve paid family leave. How dare we even dream of it? And then someone says, "Hey guys, do you know that every other industrialized country has guaranteed paid family leave?" You're like, "Oh, that'd be nice." And I think basic stuff like this and fighting for it, Stuart, will give you a route. I mean, and I like you said, I think
You
the
know,
MAGA it's so unpopular right now. They're
here's a
just
little
vicious and ugly. Sorry, go ahead.
no, here's a little exercise I think is worth playing. What if you were running for office today and you proposed what we need free public schools, and we're gonna have free busing for people who wanna go to public schools. Republicans would call that like, socialism now, but that is the essence of the American public school system. We say, we're gonna have colleges that you really don't have to pay to go to. We had land grant colleges like that you really didn't. Mississippi State, basically free. And now if you did that, it would be, "Oh, how dare you? That's crazy." So this what you know, we need a place people could go and they could access books for free. Let's call it a library. And they would hate that. They go, "No, you can't do that. You're gonna destroy the book industry. We can't give these books away for free." So there's certain things that were a given in the American social contract that we decided we were going to be this, that the Republicans have I lost faith with. And you know, the just lost you there. Hope you come back. Yeah. The irony of this is the states that are most dependent upon federal aid are these southern red states.
Right.
If they're the ultimate welfare states. A state like Mississippi gets 40% of its budget from the federal government. You know, um, and so the extending that. Okay, we have public schools. Okay, okay. So what else is going to be next? All right, we'll have free buses in New York. Why is that such a radical idea? I'm with you. I don't understand it.
And you also have to, Stuart, you and I are old enough that what's considered extreme isn't if it is normalized, right? Marriage equality we've lived, you and I have lived a life where if someone told us in the 90s men would be married to each other, we're like, get the out of here. What are you talking about?
2008, every presidential candidate, Democrat and Republican, was against same-sex marriage.
And then what happened in 2012? Tell them what happened in 2012.
Well, Barack Obama came out for it. And,
You
now
have to lead. You
now
have
you
to
don't even talk about it. Though I will say, just as an aside, I think a lot of the obsession that Republicans have about trans is the fact that they never really accepted same-sex marriage.
absolutely.
And this is just you just sort of shut up about it because it was a losing issue. So now trans, you come along and it gives you a way to sort of express that anger. Um,
It gets you
and
a chance to relitigate the loss on marriage equality, which
yeah,
is, but what I'm saying is what's considered, everything was considered extreme. Living wage was considered extreme, folks. Medicare for all was considered extreme. Interracial marriage was considered extreme.
Medicare, Medicare
Medicare,
was considered extreme. I mean, Ronald Reagan in part rose to prominence campaigning nationally against Medicare.
yeah,
Now,
and so you need a leader's job is not just to even imagine a better future, but then connect the dots, right? And then if you champion it, folks, you see change. I want to leave on two examples where people might think I'm crazy on this. Democrats threw undocumented immigrants under the bus for the first couple of months of this administration. Go back and look. They were timid, they were quiet, they focus grouped the shit out of it, right? Donald Trump literally abducted nearly 230 people, brown men, including Kilmar Abrego Garcia Stewart, and sent them to die in a foreign prison in El Salvador. Chris Van Hollen was the only senator who morally said, you know what, Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a constituent of mine. I'm going to fly over. That was risky, folks. He was the only one. No one else joined him. He flew over to El Salvador, said, I will stay as long as it takes to get proof of life. He got within 2, 3 days, he got proof of life of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The Trump administration, folks, they smeared this poor man. They did everything in their power. Instead of simply saying, we made a mistake, the decent thing, or throwing some ICE agent under the bus, they're so cruel that they kept lying about this man, right? What happened? As a result of campaigning and messaging on this, right? Kilmar Abrego Garcia became a political albatross for Donald Trump. I remember Stewart, a week later, he was negative 19 on Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So that put the pressure on them. It put the pressure. Just shows you what happens when someone messages and fights. And then something that was a political liability then became a political strength for Democrats, right? Just something I want people to think of and remember, even what happened with Jimmy Kimmel. People fought back. Within a week, Jimmy Kimmel's reinstated. So you need leaders to fight, to imagine, to message, and in the short run, Stuart, maybe push it a bit uphill and then get to the point where then the energy and momentum just pushes itself. But you need fighters, right? And like, going back to your point, ethical, moral. What do you stand for?
and
Um,
and and be for big stuff.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that, don't if you read Timothy Snyder's on tyranny, one of the first rule is do not obey in advance.
Yes.
And that is really saying, it is an autocrat's stock and trade to reduce hope, to try to make people believe that it's not possible, that they'll be defeated, that it's not possible to have this stuff. And look, that's the civil rights movement. I have a dream. It is the idea that you have to have these big ideas that are worth fighting for. Um, and I just don't know. If somebody held a gun to my head and said, "What does it mean to be a conservative in America today?" I'd say, "Shoot me. I have no idea."
Hate
I mean,
mongers, freaks,
there's no,
rapists.
say what you will about Elizabeth Warren. She has a theory of government. Maybe you disagree, but you can talk to her and she'll defend it. She's like brilliant. And you can have a discussion. You can't have that with a J.D. Vance or anybody with any integrity in the Republican Party because we're the pro-tariff party. We're the pro-Putin party. We're the nationalized intel party. We're
Right.
the we're the complete corruption party now. And, we've gone from an environment in which Donald Trump repeatedly in 15 and 16 had the promise to release his tax returns to now it's not even talked about.
Nope.
And, w you know, and I just literally just I hope Democrats are thinking about, and someone should come forward, what is the mechanism that is going to be put in place to hold these people accountable? You need to have a mechanism to go back and look at the Doge outrages. These were criminals. They broke laws. Elon Musk broke laws. All these punks they put in there, they broke laws. Go after these ICE agents. Because you're a law enforcement official does not mean that you are not answerable to the law. There's a lot of policemen
Absolutely.
and women in jail, you know? I mean, Serpico, there's a lot of the idea you have a badge doesn't mean that you're never going to be held accountable. It's the essence of it. Um, and so what is this going to be? You need something that is going to be sort of a truth and reconciliation after this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, and don't
No,
be afraid of it. And that's the problem we had with Merrick Garland. We never went through that process. So it allowed
and
Trump to come back.
and that is a the Merrick Garland of it all is a beautiful encapsulation of the timidity of some well-intentioned Democrats who would choose civility and restoration to progress and reform, where the respect for institutions outweighs the righteous anger of the majority that demands accountability and change. And a weakness of Biden, I'm sorry to say, because if Trump was there, he'd be like, "Okay, Merrick Garland, bye. And furthermore, I think I'm going to put you in jail and go after you because I want to." And then he'd put in someone who's a fighter. And Democrats need to learn. And you said it, and I've said it before. I hope people will listen to you. I said any Democrat running for national leadership, a national position, has to run on accountability. And if they run on accountability, I guarantee you people will vote for them. If they literally say, "This is how I'm gonna hold this mother effer Elon Musk accountable, vote for me. This is how I'm gonna, hold Stephen Miller accountable, vote for me. This is how I'm gonna hold Pam Bondi, accountable, and this is how I'm gonna hold ICE agents accountable." I still haven't heard that, Stuart,
And
because I
throw in
still think
Cash
that
Patel.
Anna Cash Patel, "Hey, guys. Hey, I'm at Valhalla." Sorry, I had to. Let me be petty. Uh
My dad was an FBI agent, so that really strikes home.
Yeah, 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 he's terrible. Oh, by the way, folks, for those who don't know, Kash Patel has reportedly taken several trips on a $60 million jet, wasting taxpayer dollars to go visit his honeypot girlfriend, not just
The
one.
last count I saw was 7.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So why? Who authorized it? How will he pay us back? Christy Nome. Why did you get a $172 million private jet so you can fly around with your lover
2 of
Corey
them.
Lewandowski? Two private
2.
million. I want someone to run on accountability, damn it, Stuart. And I think there's a righteous rage. I think the one who does it will really I think the person who says, I'm going to take you on, Stephen Miller, and I'm going to friggin' try you and I'm going to investigate you because I think you engage in war crimes and I think you friggin' terrorize people, kidnap them. And I want accountability for the 170 plus citizens who got deported. Anyway, who am I? I'm nobody. No one listens to me, but maybe they'll listen to you, Stuart. Stuart, before I let you go, shamelessly promote yourself.
Oh, look, I am with the Lincoln Project, which I hope people will consider supporting, um, Super PAC, which is all donor driven, and, a Substack, called Lincoln Square, um, which, I mean, as you wake up every day living this, no one is gonna save us but ourselves.
Absolutely.
There's not a billionaire that's gonna come in there, though, as we always say, if one wants to come, we're great, we're open. If they call us, we'll be like, talk about it. But, it's up to each of us, and, we're in a world in which the complete media models are falling apart, financially and otherwise. So support people you like on Substack, subscribe, pay for it.
And folks, there's 2,500 people watching this, which is fantastic. So the people who joined us late, I've been talking to Stuart, and we've been talking about last week's election, the blue tsunami, the righteous rage that many Democrats are feeling after they think that 8 Democrats caved, what the Republican Party has become, how it will further devolve, and our humble recommendations for Democrats or anyone who wants to galvanize on this, the rage and the energy of the people on what they should run for. And we also did a nice little DeLorean trip. We even did some old school references to Reagan, George W. Bush. I think even a McCarthy was thrown in there, and a Bill Clinton. This will be up on our Substack, the Lincoln Square Substack, and the Left Hook. Everything here is without paywall because I'm a terrible capitalist. If you have some money, go give it to Stuart in Lincoln Square, buy his book. If you have a few dollars left over, I have like 800 kids and 3 cats. Maybe you can help me feed one child. This is the Left Hook. I'm with Stuart. Folks, be kind, be informed. This is a long walk. We need to be joyful warriors. Do not obey in advance. Do not both sides on fascism or genocide. Fight back. Everyone has a role to play. Everyone has a role to play. And please, oh, please don't be a fascist. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, brother.
Take care.
Take care.